Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Real Science Exchange, the pubcast where leading scientists and industry professionals meet over a few drinks to discuss the latest ideas and trends in animal nutrition. Hi, I'm Scott Sorrell, one of your hosts here tonight at the Real Science Exchange. Tonight, we have the pleasure of learning more about one of the top companion animal research programs in the country and possibly even the world, operated by Dr. Charles Starkey at Auburn University. This group is on the cutting edge of research that marries sustainability and functionality. Joining us at the pub tonight are three guests to share a little more insight into this illustrious program. Let's start with Dr. Charles Starkey. Charles, you've joined us before here at the Real Science Lecture Series in the past, but this is your first time here at the podcast. So welcome and thank you for jumping in tonight.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I see you've brought a team with you. Would you mind introducing your students and then tell us what's in your glass tonight?
Absolutely. We have Justin. I think he's drinking a Tom Collins. I've got a bourbon. And then we have Josh, who's about to graduate with his PhD, and he's just having a good old beer.
Yeah, good. Congratulations. My co-host for tonight's conversation has joined us on several occasions before, so welcome back to Dr. Eric Altom. Eric was just named AFIA's Member of the Year, so congratulations, Eric, and so proud of you for all the hard work that you've put in with the AFIA, and we appreciate all the work that you've done for Balchem as well. So, Eric, when you're celebrating and toasting special occasions, what do you usually what's usually in your glass?
Well, Scott, you know me. I try to stay pretty clear-headed. So I'm actually drinking iced tea tonight. I've been with these young men before, and as you know, someone has to keep them through in between the guardrails just a little bit. So I told them to have fun, and I'll be in charge of the bail money when and if needed. So that's what I'm doing tonight.
Good deal. So, Eric, I know you've known Charles over the years. Do you have any good stories you can share?
Oh, I got a lot of stories. Whether or not
that you can share.
Well, therein lies the one criteria. No, Charles and I have known each other for many years. He has worked in the industry as well, knows the people in the pet food industry, well respected. And since I have joined Balchem, Charles and I have been able to take our working partnership to the next level, especially with his program. And he's allowed me to come in and be part of his team and a technical asset. And I really enjoy it. Being around the students has pushed me to go to that next level as well. Learning new technologies, getting back into the books, studying some of the literature, trying to figure out how some of these things may work. That we'll talk about tonight. But yeah, I've got a lot of stories about Charles, but he's got just as many about me. So probably not going to get too far off center because
nuclear weapons pointed both directions.
Well, the weapons, yeah, this is one that it'll kick on both ends. So I'm gonna probably stay pretty silent on some of those stories.
All right. Sounds good. Listen, I got to tell you about my drink tonight. I don't know if you guys have ever watched Yellowstone. It's one of my favorite stories that are programs that I got watching during the pandemic. And my local state store has the Yellowstone bourbon. So, Charles, I really like Woodford's. I typically drink that, but I bought this the other day, one bottle per customer. That's all they allowed me to have. It's pretty good. I don't know that I've got a great bourbon palate, but it's as good as any I've had before, so I will recommend it. So
tonight's pubcast toast is brought to you by PetSure. Turn to PetSure from Balchem to help you meet the technical and innovation challenges of today's global pet nutrition industry. Visit PetSure.com to learn more.
To get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your program? You know, how to get started. How many students do you have? What kind of facilities do you have? Research capabilities, curriculum, those kinds of things.
Yeah, Scott. So we're a dual program department where we have poultry science and food science. And coming from a feed and animal food background, to me, food science means human food, of course, but also food for animals and pets and things like that. And so our department's already set up kind of as a good marriage between the two, live poultry production as well as food science. So I've spent the last several years in industry and working with the poultry protein conversion industry about making food for human use, but also the co-products from that industry being utilized for animal foods. And I partner with my wife. We share our lab together here, and we do some physiology work, but we also want to expose the students to all aspects of the agriculture chain. So we've taken some projects that Eric helped devise and think up on how can we take these co-products from the protein conversion industry that's geared toward human food and upcycle those to make them more applicable for the pet food and potentially the animal food industry. So that's really how we got started in this, and we've been doing it, I think, almost 5 years now. So we've got several projects we've done. We're up to almost 80 presentations by students at meetings. We've got a full processing plant with a working kitchen for research purposes, and of course, we've got live animal production barns as well. We don't just do poultry research in the lab. We're working with swine and beef and in some cases aquaculture. And so we're looking at co-products for all those industries to try to apply.
All right, very well.
Scott, one of the things that I found interesting is the flexibility of this program. When we started some of this, we weren't really sure how it was going to work and what we would need to do. So they actually have teaching laboratories, small scale equipment, small mixers, small product stuffers, small scale that you could do multiple batches on the bench, traditional bench top work, small scale, small mixers, 5-10 pounds at the most, and all the way up through using the processing facility and some of the meat research capabilities to do 100-pound batches of these components. And so one of the things I think that is important to understand is the flexibility of scale, of what you want to do, how you want to do some initial evaluation versus all the way through final proof of concept. And that's what's allowed us to do so many different types of things on such a very, very rapid timeline. And I've been asked that question, and I said, well, it's the flexibility, it's the students, it's the technology that's already there, and the willingness to adjust the project idea to the appropriate scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Eric. Charles, as you kind of mentioned before, what we're really talking about tonight is upcycling low-value proteins into high-value food products, pet food products. Can you kind of lay out or outline the opportunity, both from a supplier or processor perspective, and then also from a pet food manufacturer's perspective? What's the opportunities for both of those entities?
Well, there's a growing protein shortage for the pet food industry side, and proteins are getting very expensive. Fish meal has been high for several years. It's a great protein source, but with overfishing of certain areas and reduction in numbers, the fish meal went way up. Dried animal proteins such as poultry byproduct meal and poultry meal, as well as meat and bone meal, are pretty good alternatives, but there's a lot of competition on the market. And the pet food industry is growing at a very rapid rate. There was an article just today that last year they eclipsed the 2020 year, which wasn't really estimated to have happened, but they blew right by it and are continuing to grow at an astronomical rate. So from a pet food perspective, the protein supply shortages are a big deal. When we look on the other side at the production animal protein conversion industry, in the U.S., we've grown up and changed culturally how we consume food. So we want to eat we want to eat meat, white meat off birds or a steak or a hamburger. We don't really consume organ meat the way our ancestors did, where we process the whole animal at one time. In other cultures, that's really common still, but we've shied away from it for different reasons here. And so there's all these protein organ meats and things like wingtips. When you go out to a restaurant, you get the mid joint and the drum, but there's a piece missing from that, and that's a wingtip. And so that market is usually pretty low value for the processing industry. We found in our lab, it's a great basis to make our pet treat products out of. So just taking, proteins and pieces like that don't really end up on the human menu, while they may be exported for certain cultures and consumption other places, there's still a lot of that product available, and it's available at a relatively low price. So the poultry industry and the red meat processing industry can get higher values for those products just by realigning the direction more toward pet food. So that's what a lot of our work is how can we utilize these products? How do they handle as far as functionality as an ingredient in treats or raw pet food or something like that? And trying to just put that really early beginning product information, or these are some options to both those industries where they can both add value to their products.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know in your research, Dr. Starkey, you're employing some technology that we make here at Balchem Corporation. But without that technology, what's some of the challenges that you run into in terms of upcycling these other proteins? What's some of the challenges?
We've overcome most of them pretty rapidly. These products do have some bone in some cases, like the wingtip. They're very small bones, and in a large part, there's still collagen and cartilage involved, which is also comprised mainly of protein. So, making sure we grind those small enough that it's not a health or safety concern to a pet is one area that we've really made focused on to make sure that the product is below 2 millimeters. It meets all safety aspects. Another big issue that we ran into is liver. Liver, there is an export market for it. It's not consumed in great quantities in the U.S., but both beef and chicken livers that we used, they basically liquefy when ground. And that liquid product's a lot harder to incorporate into a pet food manufacturing or a treat manufacturing process. So these technologies with the hydrocolloid and the added bonding of the encapsulated calcium lactate allowed us to put almost 40% liver into a mix and have it gel and bind like a really good sausage product. And so that gives a lot more flexibility for use and functionality of a liquefied product like that just wasn't there before.
Interesting. Why don't we move into kind of the research now? Can you kind of give us an overview, just kind of a top line of what the research that you're doing, and then won't you hand it off to your students there to kind of give us a deeper dive into the specific research that each of them have done?
With me having an industry background, and you guys know being in industry, it's drilled in your head. How can we make money? How can we be innovative, come up with new ideas, add revenue to our bottom line? And so just talking with Eric and some other people from again, the production industry, what are ways we can do that and get better at that? So one of the big things that we wanted to do was, how can we add value to both sides of the equation? In the meantime, something that's very important to me here is to train students. And my wife and I, when we run our lab, we feel it's very, very important that the students, it's one thing to go watch chickens in a barn or go to the hog barn and learn the animal husbandry skills, but you have to know what the end point of that business is. And that's human and food and then the co-products. So we've started devising these trials as ways to take co-products that are currently pretty low value proteins and add value to them and make sure the functionality was somewhat acceptable for the pet food industry. And so there's a lot of things that have been overlooked, and they've been going to rendering, which is a great avenue for them, but they're valued at about 10 cents a pound at a maximum, where we can convert these, and by adding a little bit of cost, our average pet treat at the market survey level is $8 a pound. So we can add a couple of dollars and we still have a large volume of room to grow to help recoup and achieve that revenue. And then both sides can share in better revenues overall. So that and really backing up the teaching, having these students go to meetings and present this data is really what the program was based on.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott, one of the things that I would add in, again, the strength of this program is the students get exposure. Just like when we were in graduate school, all students help out on virtually all projects, whether it's actually their project or not. It does take a fair number of extra hands to do some of this type of work, but with Charles's program, they can go from the feed mill to the hatchery to the barns to the processing for human food, and then look at where these co-products can and should go. And in this case, we're going to use them, upcycle those into pet treats all the way to finished product. So they understand the entire material stream of what they're doing, and at least being exposed to it from the feed mill all the way to the kitchen counter, either for human food for the family or for these specialized treats, nutritious treats for the pet. And that type of exposure at least gives all these students a very, very solid base understanding of the industry that they can build on. And again, as I say, these students push me with lots of questions, some of them that I hadn't thought about before. So every time I'm around them, I'm writing down their questions because I may not know the answer, but it does push me to go back and look. So the diversity of this program, teaching them how to do research, teaching them how to do projects, but understand that entire supply line or continuum line that is the foundation for the animal nutrition industry, I think is a very unique aspect.
Mm-hmm. I would agree, Eric. Charles mentioned that, the big part of the program is having the students do presentations. I think I've heard both of these gentlemen give presentations on the research that they've been doing. Justin, why don't we start with you? Kind of give us a rundown on specifically what you were doing as part of this project.
So I'm a food science student, and therein I kind of acted as a lead with my other food science student, Jorge Romero. We've ran 2 or 3 different experiments since the time that I've been here. What we're usually trying to do is trying to create a pet treat with these products in a way that a pet treat hasn't been created before. We know that poultry byproduct meal can be used to create a chunked and formed treat, but you don't see just ground up wingtips created into a pet treat. And so the research that we've been doing is we've been analyzing these pet treats through their chemical and physical properties, doing texture analysis, color analysis, pH, water activity, etc., just to see, how well these treats are created using the method that we're using, how well they might compare to a treat that's similar in the market.
Okay. And then Josh, what was your part of the program?
Yeah, so I'm actually more on the poultry science side. I'm not, my degree is not going to be on the food science side. And a lot of my research is with Dr. Jessica, more on some of the muscle biology, physiology work, and some of the stem cell research that we're doing. So I've always just been the helping hand, always going to the processing plant or the meat lab, helping generate products, helping collect data. But after a lab meeting one day, Dr. Charles and I were sitting down and we were discussing trying to understand the business side of these projects, trying to understand more of the economics behind it. Because a lot of times in like research and even in the production animals, when you're testing products or you're using products, the question always is this product feasible in the industry? Can I actually take this to a complex, and can the complex use it? So that's what we were trying to do with this on the business side, and that's the project I undertook, was can we actually use these products? Can we make the pet treats? And then what is it actually feasible? Could we actually even generate even our own small processing facility? And that was just more of a hypothetical, more for the business analysis, but could we actually generate a small facility to make these pet treats? Could it be feasible? What kind of a loan would we have to use? You need to take out? How much money would we need to borrow? What could we sell these treats for? How much value can we add to them? And then kind of like, what's a payoff period? How soon could we actually pay off this facility and actually start generating an income utilizing these products?
So share with us what kind of the findings were then, in terms of feasibility and economics.
Well, it's not complete yet. We still have quite a bit of work to do. But what we're finding, so we did a market survey just trying to understand what is the average price these similar type treats are selling for. If you look at, we've looked at several different stores, we've looked at online sources, and they're selling on average for about $18 a pound. What we're finding is, based on some of the products that we use in my analysis, we can add just a few dollars worth of value to actually make a feasible product. And then if we hypothetically in this analysis could sell it for somewhere similar to that, it could be fairly feasible, and we could have a very quick turnaround to pay off any loan that we would have to borrow for this type of analysis that we were looking at. But like I said, it's not complete yet. We still got a lot of work to do on my end just to try to wrap up all these loose ends, but it looks very promising.
Okay.
Yeah, and that data was these guys won't brag on themselves. They're always kind of quiet, but both of them submitted abstracts and they presented their work at the most recent Pet Food Forum held in Kansas City a few weeks ago. And for those participants, they know how competitive it is. There's only a set number of slots. To be able to get students to be up there presenting was a true honor, I think, for these young men, and a testament to the quality of work they've been doing. So both of them have been doing some really good work. I'm excited about this economic model because, quite honestly, it's a pretty good solid foundation for an initial business plan and business perspective. And that's kind of where he's taken this. I think it's going to be a really, really good, interesting look into the feasibility of upcycling these components for more sustainable pet treats.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I'd ask Josh, how do you expect or anticipate you're going to get this information to the marketplace, whether you're a processor or pet food company? Do you have any thoughts or plans on that?
In terms of getting that information out, we are looking at actually publishing this information, actually going to a business journal. Being more of a scientist, I don't have a lot of that business background, so it's been hard trying to look at a lot of the business literature, look at a lot of the business journals, and understand how to format some of the data in the manuscript. But we are looking to hopefully sometime this year actually publish that work and get it out there in more of the business side and more of a business journal.
Mm-hmm. Justin, I think you did some work with several of the substrates. Can you give me an idea of which ones you worked with? Did you work with the wingtips? Did you do anything with organ meats? Can you talk through some of the things that you worked with and some of the challenges?
So the only substrate that I have used since being a member of the Starkey lab has been wingtips. Coincidentally, I was at the meat lab whenever the Starkey lab was making treats out of beef liver and beef heart. Just as a student worker, I wasn't yet a member of the lab, but I know that we've done things similar. We've done chicken paws, chicken liver, chicken heart. And have we done any beyond that?
The beef products and carcass frames.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So carcass frames are what's left after we debone a bird. And take all the deboned meat, so the deboned thighs and deboned breast meat that you typically find in the store. The carcass, what we call a carcass frame, is the rib cage and backbone and that type of material, still with some meat and fat on it, that is basically left over. And to date, those products, the only route for them was basically to go straight to rendering of some sort, whether it be broth production, a little bit for MSC meat for hot dogs and things like that. But there's just not a great value to that product. And by taking that and incorporating it with some of these other co-products, we can actually get it using the hydrocoli technologies. We can get it to gel and bind to a nice, like a breakfast sausage grind form, or even a summer sausage form that's nice and firm, and then have a good functional pet treat to supply.
Eric, could you give some background on using the hydrocoli technology?
Sure. So in this particular aspect, we used sodium alginate, and sodium alginate is blended into the meat mixture so it could be properly hydrated. And then we need a calcium ion, and that calcium ion, sodium alginate, will provide what's called a cross linkage. And you'll see in some of the literature, they refer to it maybe as an egg crate linkage. And that's how, if you see a stack of different egg crates, they different pieces will actually blend together. And it is a protein restructuring component. Now, this technology has been utilized in human food preparation for decades, but it's only primarily been used with striated muscle. So we, as you know, we're using more of these different types of protein. And so you'll hear me talk about the work that the team is doing more as a protein restructuring or protein structuring program, because that's essentially what it is. All the material, as Charles said, is human edible, but it's probably not something that's in a traditional North American diet, but it's still very, very good, nutrient rich, amino acid rich components. Now, when you have these calcium ions, as soon as the alginate and the ions come into connection, they create this linkage, and what is referred to as a cold form irreversible set, which means that they will link and create these protein linkages. But if that linkage is sheared, it won't repair itself. So we have taken, in this case, calcium lactate as the ion source and coated it with a shell such that we can blend it into the meat batter without any additional capital expenditures, such as calcium baths, calcium sprays. And with this being able to blend that technology in, we can get a consistent texture throughout an entire loaf, which can be very, very important to the end consumer. And so it allows us to mix the components, get them into the final form that we want, and then we can control when that gel is going to set and when that protein cross linkage is going to be. One aspect that's pretty interesting is that this technology does bind some of the endogenous moisture. Now, it's not going to be like a sponge and soak up all the endogenous moisture, like Charles said, with the liver that liquefies, but it will bind some of the endogenous moisture so you can have a higher moisture product, but still have the water activity that you need for a stable finished product. So it gives you some flexibility in processing, gives you some ease to be able to utilize other components that you may not have been able to handle. And in most cases, it can certainly reduce, or in some cases, eliminate any type of special equipment CapEx expenditures, because it's essentially a mixing and then forming it into what you want your final form to be. And then you can either sell that product as a refrigerated product, or you can take it through a smokehouse somehow and then cook that final product the way you want to. So that's a little bit about how the technology, but these guys have a wealth of information. They've already started publishing some articles, but they have a wealth of information on details and the measures.
Mm-hmm. Eric, you mentioned texture. Maybe I could have the gentleman talk a little bit about how you measured and characterized texture of the different products. I don't know who wants to take that question.
I'll take it. So we have been using 3 different tests to characterize the texture of our treats, those being TPA, shear force, and 3-point bend. 3-point bend is kind of as you expected, just how much this jerky treat how easily it would bend under pressure or break if it comes out to be a more brittle product. TPA, which gives us a wealth of information, 6 different attributes being hardness, cohesiveness, adhesiveness, resilience, springiness, and gumminess or chewiness, depending on what kind of product we're measuring. And shear force, which shows the max amount of force it takes to shear through a product. Just that's a good indicator, and it's commonly used in meat processing for tenderness or toughness of a product. And those have been the 3 main analyses that we've used.
Okay. And do you have an idea of what kind of texture you're looking for? Or is the answer it depends, right, on the outcome you're looking for?
Yeah, it depends. So we just recently started a little survey that's kind of investigating that, and something that I personally hadn't thought about is just how many different kinds of pet treats there are. There are training treats, freeze-dried treats, biscuits, chunked and formed jerkies, whole muscle jerkies, and using different meats. They're fish jerkies, beef jerkies, pork jerkies, whatever. And so we're running these analyses on our treats to see what an acceptable range is, and that's already exists in the market. And we're doing that for color and probably chemistry further on down the line for these treats as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit about color then. You brought that up. What have you found out with color with the different substrates? And is it desirable?
I don't have the data to say if it's desirable just yet. What we kind of have to pay attention to with regards to color is it's more so what the customer of the pet treat would prefer as opposed to the consumer. The consumer would be a pet, and the customer is who's buying that treat for those pets. And so we can assume that they want the color to be similar to the treats that are already on the market. If they're already buying those, we can assume that they want them to be similar. And so there is an equation, it's called delta E, which shows the difference in color between different treats. We haven't yet done the delta E between treats that already exist on the market and the treats that we have made, but we have done delta E between treats that we have made using different concentrations of algin. Or we call it algin. Algin is just the combination of sodium alginate and encapsulated calcium lactate. And the delta E, whenever it is equal or less than 10, shows that they are similar. It's perceptible to the human eye, but it would more or less be acceptable to a consumer if they were different of a delta E of 4 or 5. If it's 1 to 2, the consumer would really have to look at it under, a laboratory light kind of thing to be able to see a difference. And anything below that is imperceptible to the human eye. And so in our treatments, we've found that sodium alginate doesn't change the color of our treats in a significant way so as to sway a consumer away or towards purchasing a product based on its color.
Mm-hmm. Eric, Justin mentioned the encapsulation. Can you kind of elaborate on why encapsulation is important in this process?
Yeah. So one of the great things when I joined Balchem is understanding encapsulation, application of encapsulation. And for many years, we've always tried to encapsulate and protect nutrients. And so, as you know, we do some things with horses and hindgut buffering with encapsulated sodium bicarbonate, dairy production, and ruminant nutrition by getting nutrients through the rumen so the animal can absorb it. In this scenario, what we're looking at is trying to control that process because, again, the sodium alginate and the calcium are highly reactive. As soon as they come together, they're going to form that gel. So some people may remember at science fairs when we were certainly in elementary school, they would have a calcium bath set there in a fish tank and a large syringe, and the kids could squirt alginate into this calcium bath, and it would make these little gel worms and little squiggles. That's exactly what happens. However, once you shear that, it won't repair itself. So we needed a way to be able to mix these components into the meat batter, form the final treat in this case, or the final product, and then get that gel set. So I'm utilizing encapsulation to sequester that calcium from the alginate and control that process to get the release when we want it released to get that final gel set. You'll get some thickening with alginates, and it's been used as a thickening aid. But to really get that protein structure at the appropriate time, understanding shell composition, understanding the shell thickness, understanding the moisture, the pH of your meat batter, the acidity as well. Those are the components on what will impact the release. So we're utilizing this microencapsulation as a processing aid to help us control the manufacturing of the product. Otherwise, these things they would set up in a mixer, and you would have to start digging it out, which your shift foremen, your line employees are going to be very upset, because if this stuff thickens and bricks up in that mixer, you may have to take that thing apart, pull those screws out. No one's going to be happy. But in this case, we can actually get those components mixed, get the product form, and then we can get the set. So it's a little different application in this scenario than what we've seen maybe used by encapsulation in other animal products.
Some of the substrates that you guys have talked about, the wing tips and also the frames, some product developers could be concerned with the amount of endogenous bone material in these raw materials. How do you guys address those potential problems or concerns?
Yeah, Scott. So it's always a concern for foreign material that's at a large enough size that it could choke an animal or anything. And so that's not acceptable in a final product form. The industry incorporates a lot of technologies, including X-ray and other light visualization technologies to pick up foreign material. And so what we're doing is grinding it fine enough that we're below the safe threshold of less than 2 millimeters. And the thing about bone is made of protein. All of the minerals come on as a secondary to form the structure. So bone is actually very high in protein. So it actually aids in this with the hydrocolloid and the gelling and everything as well. So we're able to capture these nutrients. We're grinding them small enough to ensure safety, and we're getting good proteins from the bone as well as some good mineral content in these treats.
Yeah, and you mentioned the collagen and cartilage before. You've got to believe that there's some value in that as well.
Nope.
Yes, that's absolutely. That's part of the total protein fraction. And while it may not be appealing for us to chew on, dogs don't mind it at all, especially when we grind it, we mix it the way we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, as I recall, most of the treats that you were made were kind of a jerky form. Is that just because that was convenient, or do you anticipate seeing this technology and these substrates being used in other forms?
Well, the one reason is jerky treats are a large percentage of the total treat market. So we wanted to mimic some things that were already out there. The second point is it's really easy for us. We take the material, grind it, incorporate the functional technologies and allow the gel to happen. And we do that, then we chub it like a sausage. And that allows us to take a lot of slices to get a lot of replications for our measurements. So from a scientific standpoint, the ease of sampling and analysis and repeatability, we can capture all that easily. So some of it's a functionality of what's easy for us to test and analyze in the lab. Mm-hmm. But the end jerky really mimics a lot of the product that's on the market now. We do test on both the pre-cooked and the post-cooked product. And the pre-cooked product would very easily resemble the raw pet foods or some of the formed jerky treats that may be they may not be fully cooked, or they're cooked through some of the new high pressure, low temp type strategies, but they mimic all the products that are currently out on the market, where they're the semi moist tender products all the way to the jerky products.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned there's a lot of jerky type products out there on the market today. Justin, during your evaluation, did you take a look at how the cost of how products are currently made compares to the cost of making them with this technology and with these different substrates?
Only just kind of looked at it from these type of products. I've not spent too much time looking at like studying like the differences in like other products. Because I've just been more focusing on some of the stuff that we've been using. And
But you've looked at the surveys of the jerky treat prices.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I've looked at the prices.
Yeah. What was your average that you found? Do you remember? I know it was
about $18 a pound.
$18 a pound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I need a jerky shooter. That's for sure.
Yeah. But that's all, and that's just looking at the jerky style from poultry.
Okay.
I made sure that it wasn't incorporating the beef or pork. It was just from poultry, and it was also making sure it wasn't a whole muscle.
Okay.
You know how sometimes you can buy like the tenderloin jerky strips.
Right.
So I made sure that the analysis I was looking at reflected what we're creating, so that way it was a very good representation.
Okay. Can you give us an overview of what the raw ingredients are that they're using today? You mentioned you were making sure that it wasn't a whole muscle. Can you kind of give us an idea of what's currently being used today?
Well, and just looking at some of the packaging, sometimes they clearly don't say, they'll just say like poultry products or poultry co-products. They really don't specify what type of co-product or if they're using any types of muscle in there at all. They really don't specify unless they specifically want to. Like if it is like a tenderloin strip, they will say made from whole chicken tenderloins or whole breast meat. So on the packaging, it really sometimes doesn't clearly state what they're actually using unless they're actually marketing for that specific type of product they're using.
Yeah. Eric, you had a comment you wanted to make?
Well, I thought it was a very good idea, because when you start looking at the pet treat market, it's very, very diversified. So you can have some of the pet treats, as Josh just said, that may just say made from poultry byproducts or poultry co-products. Then you can also have some very specialized treats. So if a dog may have, in this case, I'll talk about dogs, but it exists for cats as well. Say they have a certain food allergy to a protein, and so they can't consume chicken proteins. Well, having them on a prescription single source protein, single source carbohydrate diet, and then giving them a chicken treat is not what your veterinarian is going to want to do. So you will find things such as bison, buffalo, venison, salmon. There are some vegetarian and vegan treats that are on the market as well. So when you start, I think Josh has done a great job, and the team did a great job when they started saying, this is what we need to do to find for a solid comparison of what we're going to include, but also what do we have to include and why. Because the treat market right now, the last data that I saw was an annual growth of about 12.8% annually. Just astronomical growth in this area. So I think it's a very economically beneficial program for pet companies to look at as an adjacent to their base nutrition lines. And I think this team's coming up with some really neat ways for them to be able to do that fairly easily. But you can find proteins from all kinds of sources out there in the marketplace right now.
Mm-hmm. I want to circle back on something specific to the products. Can you guys talk a little bit about the stability of the products manufactured with these sodium alginates? Are they different?
Yeah, so Scott, we have not, and actually that's going to be part of Justin's master's project that we're going to initiate this summer. Currently, we've been looking at just very early product development, so not adding any stabilizer type ingredients to it at this time. But part of Justin's work is going to be going forward. We're going to do stabilization and measure qualities off that, as well as antimicrobial incorporation, some other functional ingredients that have antimicrobial properties. And we will be looking more at shelf life over time with those products. One of my colleagues, Dr. Jason Sawyer, did some shelf life with packaged individual slices of these treats, looked at color change over time, as well as some oxidative properties over time. In that study, with no added stabilization at all, he easily made it up to almost 2 weeks, 21 days. And then just naturally the product oxidizes without any stabilizers in it in that time. So the next step on Justin's project is going to look at that stabilization and the quality over time more for shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Eric, you had mentioned that the trend is up for treats in the pet food industry, rapidly evolving. I'm curious if you guys have. I know you've got some market research planned. I'm curious if you've done any, and if so, can you talk to that?
Yeah. So currently, Justin talked about we're doing some general survey just to get an idea of the range of the values for the measurements we've set up to take on our product. What is the range of different products out on the market? And I think it was a little overwhelming in the beginning because there's so many different types of treats. So we basically segmented them in about 6 different similar areas and got multiple treats from each of those and started performing these tests. So some of the future comparisons will be against that data of what's already on the market. So that's one end, is what is the quality, the chemical and the physiochemical properties of what's on the market. The second one that we're really getting excited about, I've got a couple of other students here. They aren't with us today, but they're going to start looking at some of the consumer sensory side of it. So we all know that it's the consumer who buys the pet treat. If it tastes okay, the dog usually is going to eat about anything, right? They like that affection. It's that attention they get when you're handing them a treat. It's rewarding of good behavior. So the dog's more about the social interaction with its owner when it takes the treat. So it's really the consumer you have to target from a purchasing standpoint. So we've got some consumer purchase intent surveys where we'll put treats out in front of them and say, which would be your preference and what are your reasonings behind that? And I've got a sensory colleague, Dr. Sunjin Cho here, that we're going to do some of that work with. In addition, we're going to go forward with some more looking at the sensory chemicals. So through an e-nose and e-tongue, we'll do that both on the products on the market as well as look at comparison to products we're manufacturing. And the whole goal is to say what's out there, what is the perception, and the e-nose will be very good. We're hoping to align that to some palatability tests for the preferences by the dog themselves. But it also gives us a perception of when we have a sensory panel come through, we can correlate that sensory panel data to this actual analysis of chemical composition and see what's preferred by the end purchaser of the product.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
that's
Gentlemen, go ahead.
that electronic nose. The electronic nose that they have there is really, really interesting because it can help give you specific data on what is being detected and what that aroma profile is going to be. There's also an electronic tongue that can actually give you some taste profiles. Now, again, this equipment was originally designed for human correlation and being able to rapidly conduct these tests. How it correlates over to pets is going to be an interesting journey. There are some companies that have started using it, but it's going to be pretty exciting. When Charles was talking about all of the variety of treats that are out on the market, I guess it was last summer, last fall, a group of technologists from Balchem, the animal nutrition side, as well as the human nutrition side, were able to visit Auburn. And Charles ought to share with them, he set up a wonderful test. Now, before he tells you, one of them that I missed, I still highly question. But I'm going to let him tell you about this test because what he set up, I think, was really, really interesting, incredibly educational, but also shows the diversity. So, Charles, tell about that test you put together for the technologists when we came for our site visit.
Well, we were going over different opportunities, both on the human and the animal side. And so one of the things we did is we got a hold of a bunch of the co-products that we use. So wingtips, paws, liver, kidneys, different organs, pig ears, cattle feet, not the hooves, but just the toes. And there's all of these interesting products. What's interesting too is we bought all those from human food suppliers. So different cultural markets, we went and shopped and got these products that are used for human food. So just displaying about the different opportunities out there of these co-products, whether we're going human or pet food with them. But then just for fun, we set up a little site evaluation test. And we got a lot of different human food products, a lot of different pet treat products, and then some that actually are labeled for either. And we numbered them all and had the group go through and fill out a questionnaire of is it human or is it animal. And I'm going to have to tell on Eric that he didn't miss one. There is a pet treat on the market that is apple and cheddar flavored, and it is manufactured to look identical to a traditional fig Newton. The shape, the size, everything is identical. And so we had to put that in there as a ringer because that's about the only thing I knew I could get Eric on. So it was a fair test. I know he'll argue that, but just different things. We took potted meat, we took Spam, and we cut the Spam to look like the pet treat next to it. So some of these things, a lot of people miss several of them. Beef jerky sticks or meat sticks that were made for dogs look identical to ones made for humans. And so as these pets become more of our family and our interactions with them go forward, the demand for human-like pet food and pet treats is really a lot of what's pushing the market. So it's important, the two things we're trying to do is take co-products that are human food grade as much as possible and incorporate those just for health reasons, and that we know they're processed, in a wholesome fashion, and then also to target where the market's going, where humans want their dogs to be eating food that looks and smells and very similar to what they're consuming. So we're trying to target that avenue as well.
And as we see the population around the world, we know that spending time with animals makes us better people. And if there's anything good that's come out of this global pandemic, people brought more pets into their home. They are not giving those pets up now that we're traveling or trying to get back to a new normal. Those animals were beneficial to them from an emotional, a mental, a psychological aspect. When we were shut down and kind of staying in place. So pet ownership is going to grow because we know pets make us better people. However, we've got population growth around the world, and pets and humans are going to be competing for these protein amino acid sources. And we're going to have to find new and different ways that I can provide something for the pet parent that looks like meat, as well as something for the pet that is nutritionally complete for what they want and appropriate, but they're not competing for the same sources. So I think looking at these whole animal opportunities, looking at these co-products, understanding how the nutrition is there, it's high quality nutrition, how to effectively, easily from a manufacturing standpoint, transform these proteins into usable treats is really where I think some of the future is going to be. This program to me, I think is Leonardo da Vinci, but I'll let Josh, fact check me on it. He said we have to understand the science of art and the art of science. And there is definitely science here, but there's also some art that we're still trying to figure out. What's the right texture? What's the right texture based on life stage or lifestyle? Is there a different texture that's needed for different breed sizes? I know with my Labradors, texture doesn't matter. They crunch, crack, and swallow, and that's it. But for my mother's Boston, may be a little different. So understanding there's still a tremendous amount of work, I think it's going to be exciting trying to figure out some of this art, but also how are we going to take care of both people and their pets going for the next 20 years or more? It's pretty exciting to me. But point of fact, it did look like a cookie. I think there was patent infringements on whoever was making that, because it had the edges, it had the shape, it had the crust thickness. I said, yeah, I got that. That's a Fig Newton. And he did pull the bag out and show me that it wasn't, but I'm not saying it was a trick, but I do think there has to be some patent infringements, or those production patents have run out maybe. But showing all of those diversity of products was a really, really interesting exercise.
Yeah, interesting story, Eric. Gentlemen, we've covered a lot in today's conversation. Is there any rocks that we left unturned that we ought to turn over?
Just to follow up with what Eric just said, this program's continuing to grow. We've got at any point, we've got 20 to 30 students in our lab. Again, like some of them, like Josh, are working more on fundamental physiology research. Some are more on feed manufacturing. And then like Justin is going the food science route. But we make all of them learn some aspects of all the different areas, because I think it makes them more complete as students. And when they go out in the industry, when those conversations occur, they have an understanding of what's being discussed. So we're going to continue to grow this program and work on the art from the sensory and consumer side. But there's a lot more science. Unfortunately, one of our food science students he started his internship at Smithfield today. Jorge Romero was not able to join us, but his project is going to be looking at a lot of different and new and innovative protein sources. So things like, of course, soy protein will be part of the mix as a standard, but pea proteins, some fish protein meals that we've acquired, insect proteins, and a lot of these other new and innovative proteins that we want to know more about the functionality. And historically, we would choose different hydrocolloids for, say, plant or vegetable proteins that seem to have better efficacy with those products versus our animal source proteins. But we're going to look at different hydrocolloids among both and try to determine what is the best fit, what do we get the best gelling and texture properties out of with his master's thesis that'll start up when he returns in the fall after his internship. So that's kind of what the next steps are, really driving home the sensory and consumer side, as well as looking at some of these different innovative proteins that are being viewed by pet food companies and human food companies as well out there.
Very well. Thank you for that, Charles. It is last call. I just heard him call it. So, what I'd like you guys to do in wrapping up, I'm going to ask something different of the students. I'd like to have you guys give us kind of an idea of what your future looks like, where you're headed, and what do you hope to do in the very near future. And then, Charles, I know you just touched on it, but I'd like to kind of just expound a little bit more in terms of what are the next steps for this project, and are there any roles that processors, pet food companies can or should play in the future development? And Eric, I'll ask you the same thing.
Our last call question is sponsored by PetSure's Structuring and Forming Technologies. New research demonstrates how PetSure can help you upcycle low-valued protein into high-value pet products. Don't miss the opportunity to extend your ingredient options and improve sustainability. Visit PetSure.com to learn more.
So, Justin, why don't we start with you?
My future has not been set in stone. I think a lot of students feel that way, but I do have a passion for meat science and pet food specifically. I've done an internship with Pilgrim's Pride Wet Pet Food Department. Rendering sounds cool to me, protein conversion in all ways, but I'm also just recently started kind of pursuing my interest in statistics. I'm right now taking a SAS or SAS programming course. In the fall, I'm going to be taking data analysis for crop, soil, and animal science. I know that the USDA has a agricultural statistics service that's interested in me. I didn't get the chance to talk to them at IPPE. I would have liked to. But I'm just, I'm still kind of open to all of that. If I do want to work in statistics, I would like to work for one of these companies. That still brings me back to my education in meat science, where I can still apply that, or food science, here I am now.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Justin. No matter what you decide to do, I'm sure you'll be very successful. Josh, why don't we flip it over to you?
Sure. So I am preparing to graduate this August. I made some really good connections at the trade show earlier this year at the International Poultry International Products and Processing Expo. But I also recently, when we were in Kansas City, made some really great connections at Pet Food Forum. So I've been following up on a lot of those connections, been talking to some people, applying for jobs. So ideally, my future looks like maybe getting into the industry, maybe either the technical service side, maybe product development side, whether that be on the poultry side or maybe even on the pet food side. So that's where I'm kind of looking right now.
Very well. Well, same goes for you. I'm sure you have a bright future ahead of you, and I appreciate you spending some time with us today. Eric, why don't you give us some your thoughts on what the future of this project is?
Well, I can tell you the future of this project is pretty strong. I think there's a lot of opportunities for processors and pet food companies to connect with Charles specifically on some ideas. Again, I think the flexibility of going literally from small scale bench aspects all the way up to larger scale proof of concept before you go into your production environment, that flexibility doesn't exist at a lot of companies. So leveraging his team and the team's passion to address some of these questions is going to be a true asset to a lot of companies in the industry, whether in poultry processing, trying to find a home for some of these types of material, or a pet food company trying to innovate and develop some of the baseline knowledge. So as far as where we're headed, I mean, Charles, I'm trying to hang on as best I can. These students are always thinking, they're always pushing me. We have a deal that they read an article, they send me a PDF so I can read it and try to keep up with them. I'm really excited about what they're doing, and I'm very excited to see where these young men are going to go, and a lot of other students as well coming out of this program. So I think the future is very, very, very bright. There's probably too much work, as always, to get done. So we just start, like all research program, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So that's where I've been trying to help Charles be an extra set of hands and a technical asset for him as well.
Yeah, well said, Eric. Charles, final words?
Yeah, I just, my job here at the university to me is twofold. It's to try to help these students get a base of knowledge that will help them excel in the industry, because this is our future we're working with right now. And show them about the different aspects. A lot of people, it's not just in the barn or in the processing plant. There's the pet food side, there is the marketing side, there's the science side of our industry as well. And then the second part is to serve the industry stakeholders who give so much back to us at university. And so to me, this is a great blend between helping pet food companies, not only having students prepared that they can enter their workforce for pet food, which is a struggle right now for a lot of pet food companies, but also the protein conversion industry and animal production industry to assist them in helping get more value for their product. And so that's what this whole program was built upon. And I hope we're being successful. And I think we've got a lot more years and projects to work on going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed hearing about your research, about your future insights into where this project's going. With students like you've got there, Charles, the two that you've got here, and the ones that you weren't able to join us today. The future's in good hands for the industry. So I appreciate you and appreciate your students. So thank you very much for joining us today. Also want to thank our loyal listeners, as always, stopping by here once again at the Real Science Exchange. Hope you learned something. Hope you had fun. Hope to see you next time here at the Real Science Exchange, where it's always happy hour and you're always among friends.
We'd love to hear your comments or ideas for topics and guests. So please reach out via email to anh.marketing@balchem.com with any suggestions, and we'll work hard to add them to the schedule. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on your way out. You can request your Real Science Exchange t-shirt in just a few easy steps. Just like or subscribe to the Real Science Exchange and send us a screenshot along with your address and t-shirt size to anh.marketing@balchem.com. Balchem's Real Science Lecture Series of webinars continues with ruminant-focused topics on the first Tuesday of every month, monogastric-focused topics on the second Tuesday of each month, and quarterly topics for the companion animal segment. Visit balchem.com/realscience to see the latest schedule and to register for upcoming webinars.